Laughter danced across the open yard like music from another life. By the refueling station, two soldiers were flicking bottle caps into a helmet, arguing over who owed who. Others lounged by crates, trading war stories, the kind stitched with just enough truth to be dangerous and just enough exaggeration to make them unforgettable. Even the sergeant in the North Watchtower had let his guard down, tapping his boot to a dusty tune drifting from the mess tent speaker. The air felt lighter than usual. No alarms, no orders, no bad news in the mail. For once, the war felt distant, and just for a moment, everyone breathed like the world had forgiven them. Then someone shouted. Boots hit the ground hard. Voices cracked, and the moment shattered, because from the edge of the woods, the K9 broke through the trees like a bullet. His muzzle was red, his eyes were wide, and dragging behind him wasn't a threat, wasn't a bomb. He wasn't carrying a weapon. He was carrying a child. The snow blew sideways as the dog charged across the field, cutting through the calm like a blade. He dragged something small by the sleeve. Soft, bare, limp. It was a girl, tiny, crying, her face raw with cold, blood clinging to her hair. She couldn't have been more than 6. Her dress, or what was left of it, was torn, stained with mud and something darker. Her feet were bare, her arms scratched. Her breath came in broken little hiccups, like she didn't know whether to sob or scream. Everything froze. Soldiers shouted again, this time out of fear, not confusion. The K9 slowed as he neared the tents. He didn't bark, didn't run wild. He moved with terrifying purpose, like he had trained for this moment his whole life. He stopped in the middle of the compound. The girl crumpled beside him, and still he waited, watching, waiting. Rifles lifted, orders were shouted, but no one pulled a trigger. No one moved. Not until the combat medic stepped through the wall of uniforms. She dropped to her knees in the snow, not caring about rank or clearance or who was watching. She pulled off her gloves and reached gently for the child. The little girl's eyes fluttered open. Green, wild, ancient. The medic wrapped her coat around the girl's shoulders. You're safe now, she whispered. I've got you. But the girl didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't cling. Instead, her lips trembled, and she whispered a name that stopped the medic cold. It wasn't a code word, wasn't a soldier's name. It wasn't even a name the girl should have known. It was her name, and she had never told anyone outside her unit, never given it to civilians, never worn it in full on her uniform. But this girl, half frozen and half dead, had said it like it had been waiting on her tongue the whole way here. The K9 didn't move. He just stared at the medic. And in that instant, the world cracked open. Because this wasn't just a girl wandering out of the woods. She had been brought, led, rescued, delivered. And she hadn't been taken to safety. She had been taken to someone. Her. The only one who could understand what this was. What it meant. The medic looked down at the girl, whose breath was now slowing into something close to sleep. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a rescue. This was a message. And the dog, the one that should have stayed behind the wire, the one that should have followed orders, had broken every rule to deliver it. To her. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I've got something waiting for you tomorrow that'll hit just as hard as what we're about to crush today. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The tent felt colder than it should have. Even with the heater humming in the corner and 2 blankets draped around the girl's shoulders, the cold still clung to the corners, as if something unseen had crept in with her and never left. She hadn't spoken. Not a word. Not in English. Not in anything anyone could recognize. But she didn't scream either. She just stared. And when she blinked, it felt like time blinked too. The medic sat on the cot opposite her, hands open, voice soft. We're not going to hurt you, sweetheart. You're safe now. The girl didn't answer, but the K9, still streaked with snow and red across his muzzle, hadn't moved from her side. He sat like a statue, chest rising and falling, eyes on every hand that got too close. She wouldn't let him go. and he wouldn't let her go. That alone told the medic something. This wasn't random. This wasn't lost and found. This was chosen. The girl looked no older than 8, maybe 9, but small for her size. Her feet were raw, toes purple from the cold. Her lips were cracked, her hair tangled with pine needles and frost. They'd cleaned the blood off her skin. It wasn't hers, but that somehow made it worse. Hours passed. A translator was called. They tried Spanish, Russian, Pashto, Arabic. Nothing worked. She didn't even react. She just kept her hands folded tight, like she was holding something invisible in her palms. Then she moved. Just once. Just enough. Her finger dipped into the layer of dust on the floor of the tent, a patch just below her knees where the heater hadn't reached, and she started to draw. Not shapes, not flowers, faces, clear, exact, with eyes that knew things. The medic crouched beside her. "What's that?" she asked gently. The girl didn't answer. She just kept sketching one face, then another. Soldiers, men, all in uniform, each one with a small insignia over the heart. The same patch, Recon Division. But it was the fourth drawing that made the medic's blood turn to glass. The name stitched into the vest. Not clearly, but enough to read, said Rowan. The same name from the black lion cub. The same man marked as deceased. She blinked and shook her head. No, it had to be a coincidence. A shared name, a fluke. But the next face was worse, because she recognized it too. Garrett Hines, missing, vanished during a surveillance op last winter. And the girl had drawn the scar above his left eyebrow. Something only someone who'd seen him up close would know. The medic rose slowly, her heart pounding in her chest like it wanted out. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" she asked. Still no answer, just more dust drawings, until she stopped suddenly. Her head snapped toward the mirror in the corner of the room, just a small one, built into the tent wall. She looked at it like it had barked at her. Then she screamed. Hi, sharp, not human. The K9 lunged forward, teeth flashing, but didn't bite. He positioned himself between her and the mirror, growling low, body tense. The mirror cracked, a hairline fracture slicing through its center. The medic knelt again, hands up. Hey, no one's going to hurt you. The girl was shaking now, shoulders curled inward, hands clenched. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them. She looked at her own reflection like it was a monster, and maybe in her mind it was. Later that night, the medic sat with her back to the tent wall, arms around her knees. The girl was asleep now, curled beneath 2 army jackets. The K9 kept his head resting across her legs, eyes half closed. They hadn't moved all evening. Someone had tried bringing her food earlier. She flinched so hard at the sound of the zipper opening that they backed off. Even now, every sound, a boot outside, a gust of wind, made her twitch, like she wasn't just scared, but conditioned, like fear had been taught to her. The medic reached for her tablet, began typing a report. She wasn't sure what to write. Found in forest. Carried by K9. No language, no identity, but knows faces of classified soldiers. None of it made sense. Then, on impulse, she reached for her portable scanner, the kind used for medical implants. She knelt quietly beside the sleeping girl and scanned her arm. A soft beep echoed. And then, a line of green text appeared on the screen. Asset code A 1987 CH5 classified. Military property restricted. Project Siren Shadow. Location unavailable. The medic nearly dropped the scanner. 1987? That couldn't be. This girl was barely 9. What was a barcode from a 1987 military asset doing in her skin? She scanned again. Same result. Same number. Same code. She backed away slowly. Her brain was spinning. The name. The barcode. The soldiers she drew. The reaction to the mirror. The dog that wouldn't leave her side. It was all connected. And none of it was safe. Hours later, she pulled the captain aside. We need to isolate her. the medic said quietly. Why? She's just a kid. She's not just anything, the medic whispered. Something happened to her. Something buried. And if we don't move carefully, we're going to trigger something worse. He looked at her like she'd cracked under pressure. But then the K9 barked. Once. Short. Controlled. His ears pointed toward the south fence. Lights blinked red across the base. The alarms hadn't gone off. But the dog, he knew something was coming. Something not right. And the girl, she didn't stir. She just opened her eyes, wide and glowing faintly in the dark, and whispered something into the night. Not in English, but the word stuck like glue to the medic's spine. She wrote it down phonetically, stared at it. And later, when she asked someone to translate, it meant, returner. As backup arrived, the medic scanned the girl again one last time. The barcode was still there. Still from 1987. But something had changed. Another line had appeared beneath it. One that hadn't been there before. Last scan, 11 minutes ago. Current status. Awakened. The medic stepped back, heart thudding. Because whatever the girl had been, she wasn't that anymore. Not just lost. Not just saved. Something in her had switched on. And whatever had been sleeping inside her was now awake. The tent was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. Lena sat on the edge of her cot, knees tucked up, eyes wide open in the dark. The heater hummed low. The girl, silent, feverish, wrapped in 3 layers of blankets, slept with her hand clenched tight around a threadbare doll someone had found in the supply bin. But she hadn't let go of the dog. The big black K9 lay stretched beside her, one paw resting gently on her side, like he was afraid she'd vanish if he moved. His eyes didn't close. Not once. He watched the flap of the tent, the shadows between the crates, the ceiling as if it might crack open, like he was waiting. And Lena? She couldn't stop replaying what had happened hours earlier. That little girl hadn't just arrived out of the snow. She'd been delivered by a dog who had no handler, no chain, no orders, and yet he came straight to her. Straight to the one person who had no idea she was about to be dragged into something way bigger than a rescue. The child had said her name, whispered it, eyes like broken glass, voice like smoke. And now she was here, wrapped in blankets that weren't warm enough, mumbling words in a language no one could place, sketching faces in the dust on the floor, faces of dead soldiers. Lena rubbed her eyes and stood. If she wanted answers, she'd have to leave the tent and go find the only man who might still be alive from whatever ghost program this dog belonged to. A name from the cold. The files were buried. Paper only. Deep storage. But she found it. Unit 9 to 6K. Nickname, Ghost. Handler, Sergeant Mason Krill. Status, discharged. Psychological trauma. Red flagged. Location, off-grid with a long string of numbers written in faded ink. A single warning was scrawled beside it in red marker. Do not contact unless absolutely necessary. Lena stared at the warning, then grabbed her coat. Because this was necessary. She didn't know what the girl had seen, but she knew someone else had seen it first. Into the woods. The drive out was brutal. Snow peeled across the windshield like claws. The sun had dipped behind the ridgeline, painting the sky the color of ash. Trees leaned in from both sides of the road, and every time Lena thought about turning back, the girl's face flashed in her mind. That haunted look, the way she flinched at mirrors, at music, at her own reflection. Lena gripped the wheel tighter. She passed an old border post, collapsed in on itself like a dead animal. She kept going. The coordinates led her to a valley carved out by time and snow. The road ended at a slope. From there, it was footwork. The shack looked like it had been forgotten by the world. Tin roof, barely standing. Smoke drifted from a crooked chimney, curling up like a ghost remembering how to breathe. Lena knocked once, then twice. Then the door creaked open, and a voice growled, "Either shoot me or get inside." Mason Krill. He looked like a man stitched together by war. Thick beard, scarred knuckles, a single eye that still burned like it remembered everything. And when he saw the dog step inside behind Lena, that fire turned to ice. "Ghost," he whispered. The K9 didn't move, just stared at him. Lena didn't sit. She didn't blink. What was Project Watchtower? Mason's face paled. He backed up a step, shook his head. "You shouldn't be here." "But I am." "It was shut down." "I don't think it was." Silence. Mason sat down, poured himself a shot of something too dark for whiskey. Then he said the words that changed everything. "The Watchers." "It wasn't a combat program," he said slowly. "Not at first. Watchtower wasn't about fighting. It was about watching." "Watching what?" Mason's hands trembled. "Things that didn't belong." Lena's pulse kicked. "What things?" "Things that moved through shadows without sound, that left burn marks in the snow, that stared too long without eyes." She didn't understand, but something inside her did. "And the dog?" Mason looked at Ghost. "That animal wasn't bred for attack. He was bred for detection, to find the things we couldn't see, couldn't explain. He led us into sites where compasses spun in circles, where radios screamed static and men forgot who they were." Lena's mouth went dry. "And the girl?" He stood, walked to a cabinet, pulled out a folder with no name. He placed it in her hands. "I don't know where she came from," he said. "But if that dog brought her to you, then something's still out there." She opened the folder. Blank pages. Only one photo tucked inside. It was old, faded. A photo of a girl with the same eyes. But it was dated 1987. Lena felt like the ground dropped under her. "This can't be right." Mason looked at her. "It's never right, but it's real. And if you're smart, you'll burn that photo, forget the girl, and pretend this visit never happened." She stepped back. He pointed to the door. "I'm warning you, medic. Some things you look at. Look back. Back to base." The ride back was silent. The girl was asleep again. The K9 lay curled by the cot like a statue made of secrets. Lena grabbed the girl's coat to wash it. But as she shook it out, something clinked to the floor. She froze, bent down. There was a cut in the lining. Not torn. Stitched shut like someone had hidden something. She pulled a blade from her belt and sliced carefully. Inside, a chip, tiny, black, and on the casing, her initials. Lena dropped to the floor. Her breath caught. She had never seen this chip before in her life. But it knew her. And then, it blinked. Once, twice. Tiny red pulse. Somewhere out there, someone had just been notified that it had been found. The red light blinked. Tiny, steady, threatening. Lena stared at the chip in her palm, her heart banging like a drum trapped in her ribs. The initials on its shell were unmistakable. Hers. She had never seen it before, never touched it, never even heard of it. But somehow it knew her name, and now it was awake. The medic stood there for a moment, frozen between decision and dread, the silence of the tent pressing around her like heavy snow. Outside, the wind rattled the canvas flaps. Inside, the girl slept soundly for the first time in hours, curled beside the K9 who never blinked, never moved. Ghost. He was watching her now, watching the chip. Lena felt it again, that tight pull in her stomach. The one that whispered something was happening behind her back, around her, inside her. Something old. She crossed to the crate where she kept her encrypted gear. If this chip was really tagged to her, it would only open with something equally personal. She opened her medical scanner case, pulled out a secured decryptor, black, palm-sized, and military grade. It wasn't meant for civilians. But this base had taught her to stop asking permission. The moment she inserted the chip into the decryptor port, the screen blinked. A single file appeared. Playback.exe. That was it. No folder. No passcode. Just playback. She tapped it, and everything changed. The screen flickered. Static. Lines. A low mechanical whine filled the tent. Then came the image. Grainy. Black and white. A wide-angle view of a snowy field. The camera was mounted high, maybe on a wall or a drone. It looked like the edge of a compound. Metal fences. Tents flapping in the wind. a communications tower, then movement. 5 figures walked into the frame. Lena squinted. The child was one of them. Younger, smaller, but it was her. Same oversized coat, same wide eyes, and next to her, figures wrapped in dark clothing, faces obscured. Their steps were too synchronized, too clean. Not civilians, not soldiers either. Something in between, like shadows pretending to be human. The timestamp glowed in the corner. January 8, 2013. That was 10 years ago. Lena blinked, heart slowing. That couldn't be right. The location read something stranger. Project site, Solace 07. She had never heard of that place. Never been there. But then, her breath caught. The 5th person in the frame stepped into view. Female, wearing a coat with a stitched medical patch on the sleeve. The camera panned slightly as the wind tugged the figure's scarf away from her face. Lena's knees buckled. It was her. Or someone who looked exactly like her. Same eyes, same height, same stride. The figure leaned down and spoke to the child. The girl took her hand like she'd known her for years. But Lena had never been there. She had no memory of this. The screen played on. More walking. More static. The figures approached a steel door set into the hillside. The woman, the one who looked like Lena, reached for a scanner. The door opened. Inside was only darkness. Then the footage ended. A single word appeared in white block letters. Archive closed. Lena sat back, her mouth dry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. Because that wasn't just a glitch or a look-alike. It was her. But it wasn't. And the little girl, she'd known her name before ever meeting her. She heard movement behind her. The child was awake. She stood barefoot in the center of the tent, the blanket falling from her shoulders, eyes locked on the screen like she had been summoned by it. Lena quickly stepped between her and the gear. "You okay?" The girl didn't answer. Instead, she took slow, careful steps forward. Her fingers brushed past Lena's arm, reached for the screen, and then, in a voice as soft as breath, she whispered her first full English word since arriving. "Home." Lena blinked. "What did you say?" The girl didn't repeat it. She simply kept staring at the frozen frame. The still shot of the steel door, half open, snow whipping across the entrance. Her hand pressed flat against the screen. Like she remembered it. Like she missed it. Lena's breath hitched. "Is that where you came from?" The girl slowly nodded. But her eyes had already filled with tears. Ghost stood beside her, chest rising slow, a low whine escaping his throat. The tent felt smaller suddenly, like it couldn't hold the weight of what had just been said. Home. But how? How could a child barely 10 years old have memories from a decade ago? And how could Lena be in a video from a place she had never stepped foot in? Unless she was never told the full story. Unless something was buried deeper than anyone realized. Lena spent the next 3 hours combing the decrypted file. Every metadata tag, every frame, every pixel. What she found wasn't comforting. There were no origin tags, no known operator codes. The encryption had military structure, but none of the common keys used in field protocols. It was older, stranger, like someone built it off-grid, then left it to rot until the right eyes found it. She scanned the chip again, this time under a forensic magnifier. Beneath the initials, engraved so faint it was barely visible, was another marking. 017. She remembered what Mason Krill said. They weren't built for combat. They were built to watch. And this girl, she wasn't just a runaway. She was a survivor, a witness of something unspeakable. And if what Lena saw was real, then Solace 07 wasn't just a ghost base. It was a living graveyard. Lena couldn't sleep. She kept seeing that version of herself, younger, sharper, colder, leading a child through a door that led to shadows. What had she done? Or what had someone done in her name? And why did the child look at her with such painful trust? As if her face brought safety. Or memory. Lena pulled the blankets tighter around the girl, who had finally fallen back asleep beside Ghost. The dog hadn't moved in hours, but his ears twitched now and then, listening, waiting, Somewhere in the distance, the wind shifted. But it didn't sound like wind. It sounded like footsteps. And Lena knew without knowing how. Whoever was watching that chip blink was coming. And they weren't bringing answers. At dawn, Lena wrapped the girl's jacket tight and pulled her boots on. She didn't know where she was going yet. But she had to get ahead of whoever was now behind them. Before she left the tent, she turned one last time. The girl had woken again. She was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, drawing shapes in the dust. Not faces this time. Not soldiers. But a symbol. A triangle inside a circle with 4 slashes through it. Lena didn't recognize it. But it made her shiver. The child looked up. "Go home," she said again, clearer this time, then pointed at the screen. Not just at the door. Not just at the field. But at the figure who looked like Lena. And then she whispered something even more terrifying. "You promised." The morning started quiet. Too quiet. Lena sat at the edge of her cot, boots half-laced, staring at the tent flap like it might breathe. Outside, the wind stirred dry grass. Inside, everything felt like a held breath. The child was asleep again, curled tight in a nest of blankets. The K9 sat nearby, eyes wide open, ears twitching. He hadn't rested since the night before. Lena reached for the radio. The line clicked. Nothing. No static. No voice. No response. She tried again. A different channel. Another frequency. Still nothing. She leaned in, checked the wiring. The unit was fine. Fully powered. But it was like the signal had been swallowed. Like someone had cut her off before she could even speak. Her stomach tightened. She moved to the outpost terminal. Old. Clunky. But it still worked. She tapped in her credentials. Access denied. She frowned. Retried. Access denied, user not recognized. Her fingers moved faster, breath shortening. She typed in her full ID, her security rank, her clearance code from last week's med supply request. Access denied. She wasn't in the system anymore. She wasn't just being blocked. She was being erased. One more try. She accessed the unit's personnel log. Everyone else was listed. Name, rank, assignment. But where hers should have been, only blank space. No name, no photo, no records. Like she had never arrived. Like she didn't exist. Her hands fell from the keyboard. The K9 barked. Short, sharp. He was staring at the tent wall. Nothing was there. Just faded canvas and a coat rack. But his body stiffened. His head lowered. His teeth showed. He growled. Low. Quiet. Lena stood, walked slowly to his side. "There's nothing there," she whispered. But her voice didn't feel right. She waved her hand over the wall. Nothing happened. But the K9 kept growling. She sat down again, pulling the child's jacket closer to her. The chip. The files. The footage. The girl. Something had flipped. Something had watched. She needed answers. She needed to speak to someone outside the base. She opened her med case, digging for the emergency sat link. When she found it, her fingers moved fast. Manual override. Private satellite. Bounce signal. The screen flashed green. Connected. Just one bar. But enough. She called the only person she trusted now. Commander Hadley. 3 rings. 4. Then static. And finally his voice. "Lena." Her eyes stung. "Sir. I think I'm being erased." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Where are you?" "The outer ridge. Near checkpoint Bravo 9. He breathed sharply. "That station was shut down years ago." "No, it wasn't. I'm here. The tents. The labs. It's real. I have a child. A girl. She was dragged in by a military K9. Sir." She knew my name before I told her. More silence. Then Hadley's voice, lower now. "Listen to me. You need to hide anything you've found. Do not use any more base equipment. Get off the grid. Don't talk to anyone else." "But sir." Click. The line went dead. She stared at the sat link. The K9 barked again. Louder this time. Then growled deeper. His eyes fixed on the tent entrance. Lena grabbed her sidearm and rose slowly. She peeked through the flap. No one. Nothing. But the air felt wrong. Thicker. Like it was carrying weight. She turned to check on the child. But the blankets were empty. Gone. The K9 was already at the flap, sniffing wildly. Lena's heart dropped. She pushed out into the cold. "Echo!" she shouted. "Where is she?" The dog took off across the camp, nose down, tail rigid. Lena followed. Her boots hit frozen mud. Her breath clouded the air. They passed the mess tent, the armory, the quiet tower with no lights, then into the field. And there, standing alone, barefoot, face turned to the dark trees, was the child. Still, silent, sleepwalking. Her eyes were wide open but empty. She didn't blink, didn't breathe deep, just stood, like she was listening to something far away. Lena slowed her steps. "Sweetheart," she called softly. "It's all right. You're safe." The girl didn't move, didn't flinch. The K9 growled again, backing closer to Lena's side. Then Lena saw it. The girl's hand. It was raised, palm out, fingers twitching like they were reaching. But nothing was there. Or maybe something was, because in the reflection of the snow, Lena saw it. A shadow. No shape, no features, just the absence of everything, like a tear in the world itself. Gone the moment she blinked. She ran to the girl, wrapped her in the jacket, lifted her into her arms. The child stirred, then whispered something in a language Lena didn't know, and finally her eyes fluttered. She was awake, but the cold had bitten her lips blue. The K9 turned in a slow circle, staring back toward the empty spot. He barked once, then whimpered. Lena didn't ask what he saw, because she knew he remembered. Whatever that thing was, the one that left no prints, no breath, no sound, it wasn't new. It had been here before, and it wasn't finished. She took the girl back to the tent, wrapped her tightly, made her tea, checked her pulse. The child clung to her like the silence might steal her away again. That night no one slept. Lena sat with her back to the wall, holding her sidearm, eyes on the flap. The K9 didn't lay down. He just stared at the corner where nothing had been, where something might return. And when Lena finally looked at her medical ID again, the barcode had changed, faded, shifted. One number had vanished, just like her file. She wasn't just off record anymore. She was unlisted. And whatever had found them in the dark, it knew. The snow hadn't melted. Not even a little. It held firm over the field, cold as stone, quiet as breath held too long. Lena stood at the edge of it, staring at the tracks from the night before. The child's footprints, bare, small, leading straight into the trees. She hadn't spoken since she was brought back to the tent. She just sat in a corner, eyes glassy, whispering to herself in a language Lena still couldn't place. The K9 hadn't moved all morning either. He watched the tree lean like it owed him something, like it might return something it had stolen. Lena zipped up her coat, slid the last clip into her sidearm. The SAT-link was dead. The files were hidden. And her name, still gone from every system. Whatever was going on, it started here. She turned to the K9. "Let's go." He didn't need to be told twice. He moved like he already knew the way. Together, they crossed into the trees, following the steps of a sleepwalking child who had whispered coordinates in her dreams. Each footprint led them deeper, past broken fences, over cracked stone, beneath power lines that didn't hum anymore. Then they reached it. Clearing. No trees, no sound, just snow packed into a perfect, unnatural circle. Like something beneath had pushed it up, then fallen still again. The K9 sniffed the ground, his ears pinned back. He barked once, then started digging. Lena dropped to her knees and joined him, brushing snow aside, fingers stinging with cold. Beneath the layers of white and ice, a metal, rusted, scratched, a hatch. It had no markings, no locks, just a single handle long frozen in place. She grabbed a rock, slammed it against the edge. The echo rang through the woods like a scream buried in iron. She hit it again, again. until finally it moved. The hatch groaned open, and a breath of air came up. Rotting paper, rust, something sharp, something old. The K9 growled low, but didn't back away. Lena turned on her flashlight. The beam caught steps, wet, rusted metal ones, leading down into a darkness that swallowed sound. She looked once at the sky, at the quiet snow drifting through bare branches. Then she climbed inside. Each step creaked. The walls dripped with moisture. Pipes hung overhead like bones, long forgotten by whoever left them here. The deeper she went, the colder it got. Then the hallway opened, and her light caught the first sign. Watchtower 06, Research Bay. She stopped walking. She knew that word. Watchtower. It was the name whispered by the handler. The project that had been shut down. But it hadn't been shut down. It had been buried. She moved deeper. The facility was dead, but not empty. Papers floated across the floor like ghosts in lab coats. Files soaked with age. Footsteps echoing against metal that hadn't been walked on in years. There were cages too. Dozens. Some broken. Some locked. One had claw marks. Another had names scratched into the steel. Not numbers. Names. Children's names. She stepped slowly past a control room with broken glass and shattered monitors. Then something flickered. Not from her flashlight. From a working screen. It blinked once. Then again. Lena stepped closer. It was a photo. A black and white image frozen on the display. 3 people. 1 adult. 2 children. And between them a dog. A K9. Her breath froze. She leaned in. The little girl had her face. Younger. Smaller. But it was her. Standing beside the same dog that had dragged the child out of the woods just days ago. She shook her head. That's not possible. The K9 walked up beside her, stared at the screen, and whimpered. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't fear. It was memory. He remembered this place. He remembered her. She turned back to the hallway. Lights flickered above, swinging gently like something had just passed through. She pushed on, deeper into the belly of the buried base. In a side room, she found an old filing cabinet. Half-burnt documents, pictures, medical reports, words she didn't understand. Latin, French, coded phrases. Then another photo. This one of the handler, younger, smiling, holding a clipboard beside the same K9. The back of the photo had a note. Echo past phase 1. Transference complete. Echo. She looked at the dog again. He didn't blink. She whispered, "Is that your name?" The K9 stepped forward and sat down, like he'd been waiting years to hear it again. She was about to speak when a sound cut through the quiet. A voice, tiny, weak, from the hallway. Lena. She turned fast. The child stood there, eyes wide, pale as chalk. Then her knees buckled. She collapsed. Lena caught her just in time, lowered her gently to the floor. The girl's skin burned hot, but her breath came cold. Her lips moved, repeating something, over and over. Not words, numbers. Lena grabbed her notepad and jotted them down. A set of coordinates. She double-checked them. Latitude, longitude, but something else. A date. Tomorrow's date. Lena stared at the numbers, then back at the child, then deeper into the shadows of the facility. The K9 stood beside them both now. His tail didn't wag. His ears didn't twitch. He just watched the darkness and waited, because whatever was coming next had already begun. The snow was falling again. Not fast, not loud, but strange. Like the sky wasn't just dropping ice, like it was dropping silence. Lena carried the girl in her arms through the mouth of the forest, her boots sinking into white with every step. The K9 walked beside her, body tense, head low, ears constantly turning. He hadn't made a sound since they left the hidden facility. Not a growl, not a bark, just that same quiet stare. The girl was unconscious. Her whisper of coordinates still rang in Lena's ears like a warning that hadn't finished sounding. By the time they reached the edge of the field, something felt different. The wind wasn't biting. It wasn't moving, like it was watching, like it was waiting for her to take one more step. She did, and the base sirens screamed to life. Not once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. The gates slammed shut. The fences locked. Every post lit red. Lockdown. Voices crackled over radios, but none of them made sense. Sightlines compromised. Ridge 5 is moving. Command, are you receiving? Then static. Then nothing. The moment Lena stepped into view, soldiers rushed from the motor pool, weapons drawn, shouting orders she couldn't hear. But they weren't pointing at her. They were pointing past her, to the ridgelines. And when she turned, her breath stopped. They were there. Figures. Dozens of them. Standing still at the top of the ridge. Unmoving. Unarmed. Unblinking. She couldn't see their faces. But they weren't looking at the camp. They were looking at her. One soldier ran to Lena's side, trying to take the girl from her arms. Get her inside. Now. What are those things? Lena asked, her voice cracking. But he didn't answer. He just looked back at the ridge and said, "They weren't here before." The girl stirred in Lena's arms. Not awake, just twitching. Her fingers curled and uncurled like she was pulling something from air. The K9 growled now. Finally. Deep. Low. The kind of growl that doesn't come from fear, but memory. They brought the girl inside the triage tent. Lena stayed beside her. The lights flickered. Once. Then again. The radio on the table sparked and died. Backup generators, someone muttered. They're not holding. Outside, more shouting. But no gunshots. No one dared. Because how do you shoot something that isn't moving? That isn't attacking? Just watching? Lena knelt beside the cot. The girl's lips were moving again. But no sound. Lena leaned close. What is it? What are you seeing? The girl lifted her hand. Slow. Shaky. And pointed to the dirt floor beside the cot. Her finger moved carefully. Drawing. Lines. Circles. Eyes. A woman. Lena. And around her shadows. Tall. Twisted. Reaching. But not touching. Lena stared. Then looked at the girl. You're drawing me, she whispered. The girl didn't blink. Then, slowly, she tilted her head and smiled. But it wasn't peace. It wasn't calm. It was sorrow, like she had already seen how this would end. Outside, the wind shifted again, and every tent flap lifted at once. Not from a gust, from something passing through. The K9 snarled and stood in front of the cot. Protective. Ready. Then boots. Heavy ones. Marching fast. Lena turned as 2 soldiers entered. One of them froze when he saw the girl. He staggered back and whispered, "That's impossible." Lena stood up fast. What? What do you mean? The man didn't take his eyes off her. I know her, he said. Or someone who looked like her. He reached into his vest, pulled out a torn photo. Faded. Yellowed. For soldiers. And a child. Same face. Same eyes. Same scar above the eyebrow. Lena took the photo with shaking hands. What is this? The man's voice was quiet. That picture was taken 20 years ago. Sierra Echo Squad. Northern Post. Lost during a blackout op. We never found the kid. Lena's throat closed. That's not possible. I watched her go missing, he said. She ran into the trees during the retreat. She was 7. Just like now. Lena turned to the girl again. She was still lying there. Still silent. Still 7. 2 decades later. The lights flickered again. Then died. Total darkness. Someone shouted for backup power. Nothing. The camp was quiet. Then one voice. From the guard tower radio. Barely a whisper. They're gone. Everyone froze. Lena stepped outside. So did the others. They looked at the ridge. Empty. Not a single figure. The snow was undisturbed. No prints. No sign they'd ever been there at all. The K9 stood at Lena's side. Tail low. Ears locked on the treeline. She knelt beside him. What did they want? He didn't move. Didn't blink. But he was breathing faster now. And behind them, the girl spoke. Clear. Loud enough for the camp to hear. They wanted her. Everyone turned. She was standing now, awake, eyes wide, face calm, and she pointed at Lena. Lena stepped back. "What do you mean?" The girl's voice softened. "They sent me to find you." The world tilted. The K9 stepped closer to Lena now, as if to say, "It's true." Lena whispered, "Why?" The girl looked at the sky and said, "Because you're the last one left." And then she fainted. Again, just like before. The ground seemed to shake, but there was no sound. Just one blinking red light on the medic tent panel. A new message, not from base, from somewhere else. Coordinates, same as before, but now with a timestamp. Midnight. Tonight. Lena looked at the K9, then at the girl, then back toward the ridgeline where shadows had stood, and felt the air shift again, because whatever Project Watchtower had hidden wasn't just returning, it was remembering. The storm didn't come with thunder, came with silence, the kind that creeps under your skin like frost, the kind that doesn't make a sound, because it doesn't need to. Midnight had passed, but Lena was still awake. She sat inside the tent, eyes fixed on the girl's sleeping face. The child hadn't stirred since collapsing again. Her breath was shallow, but steady. The K9 hadn't left her side, curled protectively at the foot of the cot, muscles tight, ears twitching. Something was coming, and whatever it was, it had been waiting for years. Lena reached into her vest, pulled out the old coordinates the girl had drawn. She didn't need to read them. They were burned into her memory now. The same numbers had appeared again, this time, flashing across her tablet earlier, tagged to an unauthorized access signal. One ping, then another, then a third, from inside the mountain. The abandoned lab. The one the army said was never built. The one she found buried beneath frost and lies. She stood quietly, careful not to wake the girl. She grabbed her pack, strapped the old flashlight to her belt, and slipped through the back of the tent. The wind greeted her like an old secret. The world was black and white now, snow lit by starlight, shadows tall as trees. She didn't take a vehicle. She didn't want noise. Just her, the storm, and the path that felt more like fate than choice. She reached the edge of the forest and followed the markers she'd memorized. A crooked pine, a stone split in two, a rusted barrel half buried in snow. Then the hatch, still there, still closed. She dropped to her knees, brushed away the ice, and twisted the handle. It opened too easily, like someone had already been here. Her heart kicked harder. Step by step, she climbed down the frozen rungs into the dark. The smell hit her again. Not rot, not mold. Something worse. Something old. Metal and memories. She flicked on her light. The corridor looked the same. Cracked tiles. Torn wires. The cage room on the left. The observation windows on the right. But there, deeper in, something had changed. A door that had once been locked now stood wide open. A storage unit. Nothing labeled. No blinking lights. Just dust. And in the center of the room, a briefcase. Black. Sealed. Not rusted. Recent. Lena stepped closer. Her breath fogged in the air. She touched the handle. Warm. She knelt, checked the lock. Military-grade biometric sensor. But just beside it, a keypad. Scratched into the surface. A 4-digit code. She stared. Only one number came to mind. The girl's barcode. 4 digits. Faint but unforgettable. 1987. She typed it in. The lock clicked. The case opened. Inside, files, tapes, hard drives, labeled with one word. Watchtower. She pulled out the top folder. Its title, Project Reverb, Memory Reactive Entities, /Live Sync Experiment. She flipped the pages. Line after line of notes. Dates, test logs, warning flags. Phrases circled in red ink. Child subjects unstable. Interface breach recorded. Synaptic tether exceeded protocol limits. And then, subject 7. Deviation confirmed. She stopped. Her hand trembled. The next page was a photo of a boy, not the girl. A boy with wide eyes, a stitched-up arm, and a dog beside him. The same K9. No doubt. The same creature guarding the girl's cot right now. The photo was labeled, Subject 7. Survived, termination denied. Lena sat back. It didn't make sense. That wasn't the girl. It wasn't her. But something about it felt connected. She loaded one of the tapes into her field scanner. The screen buzzed to life. Black and white video. An interview room. A man in uniform. And a small figure in the corner. Voice on tape. Subject 7 exhibits rapid memory sync with nearby personnel. Emotional echo feedback confirmed. Another voice. If he connects too deep, can we reverse it? Pause. Then, no. Once the link is formed, it writes both ways. He learns, and they forget. The tape cut off. Lena blinked. Wrote both ways? She pulled the second tape. Labeled, fail-safe activation. She inserted it. This one didn't show people. It showed code. A terminal window. Hundreds of strings streaming past. Then a single line in bright red. Error. Link not closed. Subject 7 still active. Sentinel K9 location unknown. The file froze. Lena slammed the case shut, heart hammering. So it was never shut down. Just hidden. Not failed. Just buried. The child, girl or not, wasn't here by accident. She was the second half of something older. Something unfinished. And the K9, he wasn't just a survivor. He was the last piece of the lock. Together, they remembered what no one else could. And now Lena did too. She stuffed the tapes into her bag, turned to leave. The hallway groaned behind her. Lights flickered. Then her tablet buzzed. She froze. It had no signal. No uplink. No satellite. But it was glowing. A new alert. Mission activated. Timestamp. 1:44. Location. Field Tent Alpha. Directive. Terminate witness. Lena stared. Her name was under the target list. She touched the screen. The message blinked. Then vanished. She looked back down the hallway. Everything felt colder. Not from temperature. From time. Something had started. Something she couldn't walk away from anymore. She climbed the ladder out of the hatch and back into the night. Somewhere above her, the sky was shifting. Below her, the earth was holding secrets. And behind her, someone had already made a move. But Lena wasn't running. Not this time. She zipped her bag, tightened her gloves, and ran toward the tent. Because if someone was coming for her, she wasn't going to be quiet about it. The storm overhead rumbled low, not loud, just enough to make the night feel alive. Snow slipped between trees and whispered over footprints frozen in white. Lena crouched behind a rusted guardrail, the girl wrapped against her chest. The K9 close, eyes sharp and wide. The compound lay behind them, locked down, lights stabbing the darkness like questions with no answers. But they were gone, escaped, running toward something named truth, but also toward fear, because the night did not feel empty anymore. Felt watched. Her breath came in quiet bursts, warm in her lungs but cold on her skin. The weight of the tapes in her pack felt heavier than lead. Everything she had learned, every horrible inch of truth unearthed, was tucked away with the girl's slow heartbeat. Fear had carved itself into Lena's chest, but she kept moving anyway, step by slow step. Behind her, the K9 padded softly. He wasn't following her anymore. He was walking beside her, guarding her, as though he had chosen something deeper than instinct. Lena couldn't explain it. She only knew it felt like the first real sense of safety she had felt since the moment the girl arrived. And yet, every sense inside her screamed that safety was an illusion, a candle in a wind tunnel. She reached a shallow ravine where the snow lay untouched and deep. She stopped, listening. The world was so quiet it felt like someone pressed a finger to the sky. The only sound was her heartbeat and the girl's soft exhale against her coat. Something brushed her mind then, a ripple of memory she hadn't allowed to surface. A fragment of her past that wasn't hers, or maybe had never been spoken out loud. The old lab, the photo of the younger version of herself, the feeling that someone had written her name before she knew it herself. Some of it had felt like memory, some like a warning, Then the K9 bristled, ears forward, staring into the darkness ahead. Lena followed his gaze. There was no shape, no glint of steel, no movement that made sense under snow and night. Still he stared. Still he waited, like a scout waiting for a signal. She swallowed hard and took another step. Then another. The wind shifted, carrying a scent she could not place, like cold iron and ancient snow pressed together. Her skin prickled and her breath left her for a moment, floating off like smoke in the dark. "Just a few more steps," she whispered to the girl, not sure if she was speaking to her or herself. They reached a rocky rise overlooking a shallow valley. In the moonlight, the snow shone silver, like glass smashed and polished by sunrise. Lena paused. This place was familiar somehow. It called to something buried deep in her, a dull ache she could not name. The girl stirred. Her eyes blinked open. They were bright and clear, too clear for someone who had lived through nothing that should make sense. She lifted her tiny hand and pointed down into the valley. Lena's heart stopped for a breath. Down below, lights moved. Not soldiers, not vehicles, but points of cold, shimmering pinpricks sliding through the snow like slow fireflies. They moved in silence, slow and deliberate, as though drawn by something below or above or inside the very fabric of the night. The K9 growled once, low and steady, not a warning, a memory, like he recognized these lights, these shapes as something familiar, not foreign. Lena lowered the girl gently. She didn't want to frighten her. "Do you know what that is?" she whispered. The girl's eyes didn't leave the lights. Then she spoke in a voice that was both childlike and ancient, as though the words had waited inside her breath for years. "That's the memory field," she said. Lena blinked. A memory field? The words felt too precise, too real for a phrase from a child's imagination. She'd never heard anyone say that before. Not in old files. Not in whispered rumors. Nothing. The lights pulsed. They gathered like slow constellations forming patterns too perfect to ignore. The K9 stepped closer to Lena's heel, watching the lights with eyes that seemed to reflect far more than just reflection. Then the girl slid to her knees. She began to repeat numbers, coordinates, a date, and a time, a moment that hadn't happened yet. In tomorrow's hours, Lena's breath hitched. Her eyes widened. She reached for the girl's hand, warm beneath the snow cold. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, voice trembling. The girl didn't answer with words. She pointed toward the swirling lights, and then whispered again, her breath steady, almost knowing. "That's where it never left." Lena felt her heart shatter into fragments that scattered like snowflakes. Never left. Never gone. Not forgotten. Just hidden beneath layers of cold and lies. The lights dimmed and then vanished. All at once. Like they had never been there. The valley fell silent again. Snow drifted into nothingness, covering the tracks, the impressions, the place where the night had breathed strange life. And Lena stood alone with the child and the K9, her heart still pounding like a drum in the hollow of her ribs. She turned back toward the forest. Her voice came out soft but firm. "We have to go back." The girl didn't resist. She only closed her eyes and leaned her head against Lena's chest, as though she already knew what would happen next. The K9 stayed close, watching every direction at once, as though he was the last sentinel before reality. Back toward the forest meant back toward danger. Back toward truth meant back toward fear. But Lena didn't hesitate. They moved again through the cold night, feet crunching over snow that seemed to echo beneath them like distant hearts beating together. When they reached the forest line, the wind picked up, brushing at them with angry whispers. Lena wrapped her coat closer, feeling every shiver coil beneath her skin. The sound came then, a low hum, not loud, not sudden, just beneath silence, like a whisper from something buried too deep for the daytime world. She stopped. The girl looked up, and the K9 stood taller now, muscles poised, eyes locked on the path ahead. That hum grew slowly, pulsing like a heartbeat, like something waking. Lena reached for the girl again. Her pulse quickened. Then the hum cut off. Just like that. Nothing but night. Nothing but snow. Nothing but the cold echo of something unfinished. The K9 whined once. Then he looked up at Lena, as though asking if she was ready. She didn't know, but she nodded. "Let's go home," she whispered. And then she heard the last words of the child she had protected, carried, healed, and saved through nights that felt longer than lifetimes. "What is home?" she asked. Lena didn't answer at first. She only looked at the sky, at the snow, at the silent earth beneath her feet. Then she spoke, and her voice was clear, strong, and full of truth that had been hidden too long. Some things don't come back for rescue. They come back, so no one forgets. And far in the distance, where the trees met the horizon, something answered her in a sound that was wind and memory and life all at once. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If you enjoyed this story, I promise you will surely love the next one. This is crazier and more thrilling as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.